Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Future Fest podcast. Today we have a really special guest with us. He's Mario Rizzo. He's the CEO of Artisan Gaming Studios. Mario, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm gonna ask, how are you finding Future Fest so far?
Uh, I'm actually so surprised and very impressed. It's a massive conference. I really like. My favorite thing I think about it is most of the conferences I go to are very specifically focused on like it's a game conference or AI or blockchain or crypto or this was really cool that we had all the tech sectors and conservation and women in leadership, and we had a quite a big mix. And I think that meant I got to meet so many people I normally wouldn't meet, plus the public, right? So people coming in to the exhibition hall. So I really, really enjoyed the show. I think you guys have done a fantastic job. So I'm definitely, I hope that the team invite me back, and I'd be happy to come back to Lahore. It's a beautiful city.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
Uh,
So have you met like-minded people?
have I met, I'm sorry?
Like-minded people?
Oh, yes. One thing I didn't know was funny was that there was a delegation from Saudi Arabia coming.
Yeah.
We're all staying at the same hotel. It was a coincidence because
Yeah.
they gave me 5 hotels and I just picked the first one on the list.
Right.
And yeah, so we have been. That meant this whole time. So the first night I met most of the game development community.
That's great.
They came in to the first dinner, and so we all sat at dinner together and talked about game development, and I showed them a little pitch on our new game that we're working on so that they could see kind of a little bit about our process and how we work, and then they explained to me their process and how they work and how things have been going in Pakistan and advantages and disadvantages, what are their problems here and what's been great for them here. And I think it was that first night was a perfect exchange, and I really like the way that they've been managing the international travelers is we eat together, we meet together, and then we work with the team from Future Fest. So then every day we're having breakfast together, and then we're having dinner. So it gives lots of opportunity for informal talks with people that probably, if they just sent everybody separate and you did your own thing, I think you would never meet these people or have this exchange.
That's great. So could you tell us about your company, Artisan
Sure.
Studios?
Of course, yeah. So Artisan Studios, it's an independent studio. Myself and my co-founder, Julian Bourgeois, founded the studio in 2016. Originally, there were 12 of us, or about 10 of us at that time, working together in Paris, in France. And we were working in the mobile games industry. But most of us were fans of console games, and we really particularly liked Japanese RPG, which are called role-playing games. So it's a genre of games. Probably the one most people will know is Final Fantasy, right? Is the big one. And we really wanted to make games like this. And our studio that we were working at, as I said, they were a mobile free-to-play studio, and the investors were not very supportive of us going in this direction. So we decided to quit, and we got an offer from the government of Canada to set up our studio in Quebec City. So we moved the whole team and their families, children, everyone from France to Canada. And that was August 4th, 2016. And then from there, we started working on concepts and prototypes. And I think it was in July of 2017, we signed our first publishing contract with Idea Factory to develop a game called Super Neptunia RPG. And that was the very beginning of the studio when it was quite small.
Right. So can I ask you about how you became a video game developer?
Oh,
Sorry.
sure, yeah. By accident, mostly, because
Oh,
in those days there were no schools for video game development. They're very
yeah.
new, and most of the schools were, I would say, like maybe 4 or 5 years behind the industry. So they'd teach you something, but it was something that was not very relevant for new games. What happened was I was working a job I did not like very much, and one of the friends of mine who was working there, we always joked about quitting and stuff because it was very serious work and stuff. I originally started in banking when I was quite young, kind of even before I finished university. I was working in banks in the U.S. And a friend of mine told me he was quitting his job because
Right.
he was going to be a game designer, and we all laughed. Like
Yeah.
kind of like when somebody tells you, I quit and I'm moving to Hollywood to be an actor or
Yeah.
something. Oh, sure, you're going to be famous. Okay. And but he pulled me aside and he said very seriously to me, no, Mario, I'm very serious. I'm applying for a job at Sony. And I really think you should. They're having a party. It was near Christmas in 2002,
2002.
and
That's old.
2002, and he told me, please, when they have a Christmas gathering, a party that they're having, and would you please come with me? You're allowed to bring one person. I want to bring you, and I want you to meet them because I think you'll want to work at Sony. And that was basically how it started. He brought me to the party. I met, at that time, there were some of the top guys in the game industry, but I didn't really know them. I wasn't a programmer or anything, so I never thought I would ever work in video games. But he introduced me to the president of Sony Online, John Smedley, the very famous game designer Ralph Koster, who invented Ultima Online, and they were all at this party, and they were very friendly, and they ended up liking me, and they said, look, well, you don't really have the background for game development, but we'll let you start in customer support where you answer the phone and help customers in the game. Because at that time they had a very successful online game called EverQuest, which was
EverQuest.
EverQuest, yeah.
Right.
So that was the first 3D MMO.
That's 2002, right? It's
Yeah, it was like,
2002.
well, it released originally in '99, but it was 2002 that I, started working there, and EverQuest was before World of Warcraft, right? So it was this kind of online service game, and they were the first ones to make it. And I think they told me they had spent $6 million to make the game,
Right.
and I think the game was making at that time something like 20 million a month,
Oh.
right? So these guys were rolling in money, right? They were doing fantastic. So they asked me if I would come and be customer service for this game. So that's basically my first job. I was temporary customer service. I worked at night, so I worked from I think 7 p.m. till 3 a.m. Answering customer calls and stuff.
Right. That's quite inspiring, to be honest.
Oh, thanks.
And so I'm gonna ask what games are currently available on the market by Artisan Studios.
So 2 games. First game we're really proud of. It was Super Neptunia RPG. So we developed that game quite quickly. It was a team of, as I said, like 10 to 12 of us. I think it was 10, and then we hired 1 or 2 more people. So by the end, it was 12. We made the game in a year and a half, and it was a first-time collaboration between a company called Idea Factory. So Idea Factory is a pretty big publisher in Japan, and the Neptunia franchise is their biggest franchise. So it's their kind of golden franchise. So that game, there's been, I think, almost 20 games released in the series. They also, it's a animated TV show. It's a manga, which is those Japanese comic books. It's a set of toys and collectibles. So in Japan, Neptunia is quite a well-known brand, and no Western studio had ever made a game in the series before. Now, all their games previously were 3D games, and Artisan's skill is to draw and animate in 2D. So almost kind of like old style Disney, 1950s kind of like when you look at the old, Cinderella or Bambi, or this is kind of the inspiration for Artisan Studios that's why we call ourselves Artisan Studios, to create art and have the players play inside of that art. And so they were really excited about that. They wanted us, because that would be a new dimension for the game. Nobody had ever seen the game like that. So yeah, that's the first game. It came out in 2018 on PlayStation 4, PC, on Steam, and then also on Nintendo Switch. So those are the 3 platforms. The second game is a bigger game that we developed called Astria Ascending. We're also very proud because with that game we had a collaboration with some of the creators of Final Fantasy. So Kazuzuki Najima, who's the writer of Final Fantasy 7, 10, he also wrote Kingdom Hearts. So he's he's also never worked with a Western company before, so we had to work with him in Japanese and go to Japan quite a lot, So he wrote the story. Then the composer, the very famous composer Hitoshi Sakimoto, who's a good friend of our co-founder, Julian Bourgeois, so Sakimoto-san, and he's my friend too. He's a great guy. So Sakimoto-san worked on Final Fantasy 12, Final Fantasy Tactics. He also did a lot of the Japanese RPGs. So he works with Vanillaware on Dragon's Crown, Odin Sphere, Miramus of the Demon Blade, and Ogre Tactics. So these are very famous Japanese games. So he did all the music. He hired all the Japanese voice actors to do all the different characters, and he did all the sound effects with his studio in